The Susan Brender Show is a radio show online broadcasted on YouTube across the United States and globally. The show features guests who speak about health, spirituality, entertainment, and a host of subjects to enlighten people across the nation. Listen to the show that empowers women and men alike and highlights those who have made a difference. I'm Susan Brender, and this is the Susan Brender Show. Today, my guest is Sheila Houlahan. She's an old friend of the Susan Brender Show. Not that she's old. I am old, but that's another story. Now, she's an actress and a singer with a growing resume. From television and film to music and modeling, her talent and her beauty make her stand out in all of her performances. Sheila is well on her way to build a successful career with many industry types taking notice of her diverse abilities and skill set. And I want to welcome Sheila Houlahan to the Susan Brender Show. It's absolutely a pleasure to have you on.
Oh, it's such a pleasure to be on. It's so great to finally get to do this. So how are you doing? How are you holding up in the pandemic?
Well, I'm very pleased because I think things are starting to get better. You know, people say maybe not, but I say they are because everything seems to be open in Florida, and I'm so pleased. I can't even tell you. It's been a real crisis and a real trauma for a lot of people. Now, you're an actor, and in the acting field, what happened, I want to know, did you work? Did you have a job? Because a lot of actors, music, singers, you name it, have been like not doing much. What about you?
Oh, absolutely. And we actually had to postpone filming halfway through finishing season 2 because of the pandemic. And as it stands right now, let's see, I mean, we put everything on pause in March. Now we're in November and just kind of waiting for everything to clear up. Part of the season is going to involve traveling overseas to finish filming and occasions. So just like everybody else, it's been interesting and certainly a challenge to try to find ways to create. But I'm making some of my own projects. I'm working on a play right now. Actually, it's going to be a virtual play streaming on Twitch with me and renowned voiceover star Ellen McLean. We're doing a 2-woman show that's going to air sometime in 2021. So I think, you know, while it's been hard, it's also about finding organic ways to create in the middle of this new reality, right? You have to find ways to let your voice shine out despite the circumstance.
Yeah. You know, it's an interesting thing that you talk about that because today, what are people doing? I mean, they were stuck inside for so long. So that things that are on Amazon Prime, that were on Netflix, became very popular. And it's a great time for being an actor that has a scenario that is on one of those, well, we'll call them networks, okay? Because when you think about it, it's a great way to get started. Now, let's talk a little bit about what you're doing now, because I know that you're filming a supporting role in The Little Things for Warner Brothers.
Yes. So we actually blessedly wrapped that right after Thanksgiving in 2019, so almost a year ago now. And I'm so grateful because I do know other actors out there who, you know, sort of like I mentioned for the Scottish play, were in the middle of filming or getting ready to start right when everything shut down. So we're very fortunate that all of the principal photography is done. Now with that, it's interesting because, of course, that was going to be a film that had a theatrical release, especially with the star-studded cast of Denzel Washington, Rami Malek, Jared Leto. It was going to be a major release. And now the fate of the film, I'm curious to see. You know, we've seen some other films like Emma or Mulan that have come out and production decided, okay, well, we're just going to air it over streaming services because probably can get more views, especially if we do a early access pay-per-view type thing, maybe make some sort of a return on it. I'm not sure what the fate of The Little Things will be. I know it's definitely still in post-production. I think there's a good chance that it might get pushed back so it gets the proper theatrical release that it deserves because it is an incredible story. But whether or not it gets released over Netflix or Amazon or we push back until later in 2021, I'm not sure. But I know that whatever path Warner Brothers takes is going to be the right one, and I trust them with that because I can't wait for people to see this story.
Of course. You know, Sheila, you've worked with so many interesting people on this film. Tell us a little bit about what it was like to work with Denzel Washington. You know, he's a major, major success. So what was it like?
It was incredible. I mean, like, I kept pinching myself throughout the process because I was like, I am getting paid to basically have a master class with this legend. I mean, he's such a giving human. And I think in my experience of working with celebrities, almost everybody that I've worked with has been incredibly giving of spirit and just open. And I think you have to be when you're working at that level, right? To get to that level in the first place, you have to be so open to collaboration and to the other people around you that it's just a treat every time. He was so loving. And it was interesting to watch him work because rather than treating the script like some item that's set in stone that can't ever be touched or moved, he was constantly in collaborative talks with the director-writer, John Lee Hancock, and the story was evolving in real time while we were all there together. It was just fantastic to watch his process. You know, everything was motivated by, well, is this what my character would do? Considering the scene, once he actually saw it in front of him and going, wait, actually, this doesn't make sense anymore. Why don't we try this? So it was a lot more of a workshop and a lot more of finding ways for the story to be organic rather than, I think, what most of us actors feel, which is, well, this is how it's written. I guess this is the way it has to go, even if it doesn't feel right. It was just incredible to watch him work. I learned so much about what it is like to work at that level.
You know something, Sheila, it's very interesting because a lot of people want to be actors or actresses, if you will. And the problem is that it's a very difficult field. And their parents usually say, you know, when they tell them, I want to be an actor, the parents say, what are you doing? Why are you doing that? How are you going to make a living? But you're passionate about this. So how did it, you know, what was the relationship between your parents and you with regard to your joining this or participating in this career?
Yeah, you know, it's funny you asked that because this is a topic I'm actually quite passionate about. My parents were very supportive. You know, they went into it from the perspective of, why not try, right? Like, I think just lowering the stakes and going, okay, if we're worried about this, then let's do this in as a low-stake way as possible. Maybe not invest as much into it at the start financially so that we can go in a spirit of, like, play and having fun and exploring. There was never any, you shouldn't do this. There was never any sort of, like, narrowing of the field of what appealed to me. And so because of that, I was able to approach it in a really kind of light way, as it were. I was able to be like, this is fun right now. Let's see if I like it. And most of the work that I've done in my life has been approached from that standpoint of treating life more like a laboratory rather than a race where I'm trying to get to the finish line. And before all my recent work as an actor down in Hollywood, I actually, in my early 20s, was a voice teacher for teens and kids up in Seattle. And I remember having this conversation with a lot of parents of my students. I mean, it was already funny because I wasn't much older than them. So our relationship was different from the start, right? Like there's a different sort of, it becomes more of a mentor-peer relationship because you've just been through this process and you want to let them know that it's okay to dream. But I always say that to parents, is I'm like, I have no right as a human to try to sit here and act like a fortune teller and tell you what your kid can or cannot do. All I can do is guide them down the path of what feels good, or guide them down the path of like, well, if this is what you want, then let's try it. But let's not get bogged down by fear, because I think so much of that, like I said earlier, comes down to this like misplaced fortune telling of, oh, well, you look at the statistics, it's very likely you won't make it. Well, that may be true, but is there a lighter way that we can approach the situation and say, regardless of the statistics, like what is a way to sort of have fun with this process and see if you even like it in the first place?
I'm just going to interrupt you for a second, Sheila, because, you know, it's a funny thing that you mentioned, looking into that little ball and trying to get information about your future or how you're going to, what you're going to do or how you're going to do this. You know, a long time ago, I was in New Orleans, and it was a special event that I attended, and one of the things that they had as an entertainment was a person who would read your palm, okay, and look into the ball, you know. And, of course, I thought it was just going to be a lot of fun. But she said to me, Sheila, she said, you know something? You in the future are going to teach. Now, I'm a host of a show, but one of my passions is really to educate people. And that's what this is all about, this radio show, this podcast, if you will. I like to educate people, which leads me to the question. If you have a chance, and you work with students, if you had a chance to teach them something about the acting career, what would you tell them specifically?
Wow. Okay. Deep question. I'll give the first answer that comes to mind because there's so many ways we can take that. But what I would tell them is that the best way to approach a career where the odds are 1,000,000 to 1, whether it be acting, whether it be music, whether it be arts, whether it be any kind of creative passion that lights them up, the best way is to approach it gently. You know, I saw so many actors in my time who invested outrageous sums of money in student loans to be able to attend these seemingly prestigious universities and institutions. And the result was that, sure, okay, maybe they had a little bit better training from the get-go, but the energy that they led into the room for every audition, for every interview was, please help me make this worthwhile, right? So it trained them to enter that space from a place of anxiety, from a place of, please help show me and prove to me that this wasn't a mistake. I found, on the contrary, that by not having really any sort of formal institutionalized training, but rather only taking training on when I could afford it, and otherwise trying to workshop the process myself at home for free, that, dare we say, is a huge part of the creative process that every artist needs, I was able to walk in and go, if it doesn't happen, my life is no different. Therefore, there's nothing to lose. There's only something to gain by trying.
Yeah. So when you tried and when you got into a specific film, is there any particular film that does educate people? I want to tell you something, which is really, for me, one of the things that I think about, and that is everything today is digital. Everything is special effects. Violence, you name it, people smoking all the time. And after all this while, you think they would know something, better than that. So what I'm interested in knowing is, how do you deal with the fact that younger people, and I'm not going to say older people because I think they're different, but younger people love that action, those thrillers, the animation, you name it. Why? I mean, why can't they enjoy just a plain story?
So I think all of those things are hooks. All of those things are gimmicks to sort of try to pull people in and say, hey, wake up, pay attention, there's a story. But if it was just those hooks, people wouldn't keep watching. And I think, to answer your question, when something has a good enough story, and story is something that I am passionate about. At the end of the day, the reason that I pursue this career is because I have an obsessive fascination with story, and why story is the one thing that unites all of us, right, in terms of shared experience. So, sure, sometimes younger people, I think, because we've been conditioned over the years to only respond to that kind of stimuli. You can blame a lot of kids' programming or technology or what have you. They need that flash and bang to get their attention. And then once you have it, it's the story, it's the relatable human experience that keeps them engaged, right? That keeps them going, wait, I can relate to that hero. I mean, look at how many heroes there are out there that have made actors who previously had no credits into mega stars. It's because kids all over the world are going, hey, that's something that could help me right now. That reminds me of my life. Maybe if I were more like this character, it would be easier to get by in my own story, in my own lived experience. So I agree. I think, we can't predominantly rely on those kinds of hooks to get people to care about story, but certainly they definitely have their place, and I understand why they're used.
Yeah. You have a passion regarding mental health. What is that about?
Absolutely. I'd be happy to share. I'm pretty open about this. I had my own mental health struggles for most of my life, and being on the inside of the system, I learned how much mental health is just completely misunderstood in a way that really honestly boggles my mind. It's we've made so many advances in sort of, shall we say, physical medical health care. We've made technological advances. We've grown so much as a society where when you think of social media or technology, we've grown at an exponential rate that we ourselves can't even process or keep up with. And yet our practices for mental health care are from the Stone Age, it feels like sometimes. And I really feel that that is such a key to remedying so many issues in the world. I mean, you hear about all these school shootings. Certainly with quarantine and the pandemic, people are waking up, I think, a little bit to why mental health is important. But especially for young kids, and, this was my experience, when you're struggling with something that could just simply be biochemical and there's no fault of your own, but is just an accident of nature, to then have it dismissed as a character flaw rather than actually examined the way that you would examine, say, a heart murmur, puts everybody at a loss. I think it's a shame. I think, we look at suicide rates. We look at how young people and children are struggling just to be heard because there's so much lingering prejudice. And I'm sitting here like, well, we have the tools to be able to address this. Why aren't we?
Yeah, good question. I really, or good statement, if you will, because, yes, we live in a world today where people, before it was like a shame to say I'm depressed or I'm anxious. I take pills. I got a psychiatrist. I got a psychologist. It was really taboo. But today, people are coming out and they're really expressing their feelings. And I'm really, to be honest with you, I think this is fabulous. When people say to me, "Oh my God, you have to do that," yes, you have to do that. If you want to really get over some of these issues, and you need a little bit of help. Now, that leads me to your philanthropy. What are you doing with regard to philanthropy?
Oh, absolutely. I've been volunteering with a couple different organizations over the years, like volunteering with NAMI, and most recently I actually partnered with this really cool company I'm super passionate about called Come Alive Outside. I think everybody who's listening, go check this organization out right now. They have discovered that they can partner with different doctors' offices around the country to actually prescribe outdoor time as a remedy for physical and mental illness. They just this summer completed a campaign called 100 Miles, 100 Days, which I helped them with their social media aspect, right, for the campaign, because I do have a decent following. Right. And we were able to get 1,700 walkers worldwide to participate and walk 1 mile a day for 100 days. And, of course, I signed up myself. And, the difference that I felt, especially during this pandemic, was there's something about connecting back to nature, connecting just back to your roots, really just like simplifying everything as a balm for all the noise that we deal with daily that was so healing and important. So I always look for organizations like Come Alive Outside or Project Heal, which is a company that looks to secure funding for people who want eating disorder treatment who can't afford it on their own. Because that's another thing, right, is that so much of mental health care isn't covered by insurance, so it ends up only being reserved for a small percentage of the population. But I really strongly believe this is something that we need to address if we want to move forward in so many recurring issues that are that's plaguing our nation. We have to deal with mental health if we're going to move forward.
It's an interesting thing, Sheila, that you brought up mental health, because one of the things that I've been talking about in some of the shows that I do is the fact that, you can get care and you could get money for the care, physical care. I mean, it's available. I mean, people do it all the time. But when it comes to mental health, people don't pay attention and they don't fund it. And I don't want to get into politics now, but of course, you have to wonder whether there is there's an availability, if you will, for getting funding for mental health. And I, at the moment, don't think so. So we have to, people like you and I who are really concerned about this, have to push it, have to tell every one of the people in our Congress and our Senate, we have to let them know that there's a need out there and they need to fund it. So what I was saying is that, we have a government who thinks about physical health and, funds all kinds of things, heart disease, cancer, you name it. But when it comes to mental health, it's a forgotten thing. And if you had an opportunity to tell your Congress or to tell somebody in government, what would you tell them about mental health?
I would tell them that at the heart of a lot of the issues they're addressing, they will find mental health over and over again. And this isn't an issue where we can just bury our heads in the sand and expect it to go away. This is something where there's really only one end to the story, which is confronting it head on. If they want to wait for it to boil over and for more pain and more heartbreak to be caused, so be it, but they must deal with it. And I hope that they don't have to do that, right? I hope that everybody in our government and everybody in our world even wakes up and realizes that mental illness is real, mental health is important, and that people deserve care no matter who they are, where they're from, or what they're going through. All of us deserve care. All of us deserve an equal access to a happy, healthy life.
That's right. Well, today my guest has been Sheila Houlahan, who is just really using her passion for what is in the acting field, music. Well, do you dance? I forgot to ask you. Do you dance as well?
I do not. I've got 2 left feet, though. I'd love to learn.
Well, it's been a pleasure. Now, let me ask you something. If people want to get in touch with you, Sheila, and they want to kind of get some of your wisdom, because you have a lot of wisdom, how do they do that?
The best way is to follow me on Instagram, and my handle is @Sheila Houlahan, spelled SheilaHoulahan. I always respond to comments, so please join the conversation, and it's always fun to get to know and meet all of you.
Well, again, I want to say thank you. It's been a pleasure having you on my show.
Thank you. It was so much fun to get to talk.